When Lunaya married Turok, she knew she was blending two cultures, two families, and two different definitions of loyalty. What she didn't know was that the enemy wouldn't be outside their home. It would be her own brother, who would betray her husband, then sit at her table and ask for more stew, as if nothing happened. But betrayal like that doesn't go unanswered, and family doesn't mean silence. Not anymore. When Lunaya introduced Turok to her family, she hoped they would see what she saw, a kind, hard-working man who loved her deeply. But her brother Kasim never looked past where Turok came from. He smiled in front of guests, but when they were alone, his tone changed. He would make small jokes about Turok's accent, laugh at the way he dressed, and call him names like imported or passport husband. At first, it was just little comments, nothing too loud, nothing too clear. But Lunaya noticed. She felt it in the room every time they were together. Turok would stay quiet, never answering back. He believed that time would earn Kasim's respect. He was wrong. As months passed, Kasim grew bolder. He started saying things like, "You married down, Lunaya," and "He should be lucky we even let him sit at our table." Turok still said nothing. He held Lunaya's hand under the table and stayed calm. But Lunaya's heart began to burn. How could her own brother speak like this? Where was the love, the respect that family was supposed to show? Then one day, during a family barbecue, Kasim pulled her aside. He leaned close, not even trying to hide his smirk. "You know," he said, "he's not even from here. One call, and he's gone." Just like that. Lunaya froze, not because she believed he would really do it, but because something in his eyes told her. He already had it planned. He didn't say it out of fear or concern. He said it like a weapon, like he was waiting for a reason to use it. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a protective brother, but a man who couldn't stand the idea of her building something good with someone he didn't control. Turok, standing a few feet away, smiled gently at her, holding 2 plates of grilled chicken. He had no idea what was said, no idea that, behind that smile, her brother had just declared war. And for the first time, Lunaya didn't try to fix it. She didn't explain. She just nodded slowly, storing every word in her heart. Because when family starts drawing lines, sometimes the only thing left to do is draw your own. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon. Lunaya was folding laundry while Turok prepared tea in the kitchen. The day felt normal, peaceful even, until the loud knock came at the door. 3 knocks. Sharp, firm, unfamiliar. Lunaya looked at Turok, confused. He wiped his hands and went to answer it, thinking it might be a neighbor or delivery man. But when he opened the door, his body stiffened. 2 men in suits, holding badges, immigration officers. "Mr. Turok?" one of them asked politely but seriously. "We need to ask you a few questions regarding your immigration status." Lunaya stood behind him now, heart racing. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to sound calm, even though her stomach dropped. Turok turned slowly to her, then back to the men. He nodded and stepped aside to let them in. They didn't come in shouting or accusing. They asked calm questions, but every word felt like a hammer. They said they had received a tip, a detailed report, suggesting that Turok's marriage to Lunaya was fake, that it was arranged only to help him stay in the country. They mentioned dates, addresses, even the name of the minister who married them, things only someone close to them could possibly know. Lunaya felt her throat tighten. She reached for Turok's hand, but he didn't respond. He just sat on the edge of the couch, quiet, frozen. Not because he was afraid of being deported, not because of the questions, but because someone out there had painted him as a liar, as a man who didn't love his wife, as someone who used her. And worse, it had to be someone who knew him, someone close. The officers explained the process, told him he would need to come in next week for a full interview. They left professionally. No shouting, no arrest. But the silence they left behind was louder than anything. Turok didn't move. He just stared at the door. Lunaya sat beside him. "We'll figure this out," she whispered. But he didn't speak. His eyes were filled with something deeper than fear. It was pain, pure, raw pain, the kind that comes when someone you trusted tears the ground from under you. He looked at her finally, voice soft and cracked. "Someone thinks I don't love you. Someone wants me gone." She swallowed hard, because deep inside, she already had a name in mind, and it was someone who sat at their table, ate their food, called her sister, called him a joke. That day didn't break Turok, but it broke the silence between them. and it started something neither of them could stop. Because once truth is bruised like that, something inside you changes forever. Lunaya couldn't sleep after the officers left. Even when Turok tried to smile and say it would be okay, she could see the heaviness in his eyes. Something inside her refused to rest until she found out who had done it, who had betrayed them like this. The tip to immigration wasn't just a random lie. It had too many details, too many facts. Someone knew where they lived. Someone knew their wedding date, where Turok worked, even the name of the pastor who blessed their home. A few days later, she visited a childhood friend who worked at the immigration office. They hadn't spoken in a while, but when Lunaya told her what had happened, the friend's face turned serious. She closed the door, lowered her voice, and said something that made Lunaya's blood run cold. The report was anonymous, the friend whispered, but it came from a local number, someone nearby, someone who knows your life very well. It wasn't some stranger. Lunaya nodded slowly, pretending to stay calm. Her heart was beating fast. Did the person mention anything specific? The friend hesitated, then gave a small nod. They listed your wedding date, Turok's visa type, and said the marriage was only done for legal papers. They also described your apartment building, the floor, even the color of your front door. Lunaya blinked. That was too close, too exact. Not something even most neighbors would know. Only someone who had been inside their home. Only someone who had seen those documents, who had stood in their living room, heard them talk about their lives. Only family. Only Kasim. She left the office in a daze. Her hands were shaking as she got into the car. Her mind kept flashing back to that day at the barbecue, when Kasim leaned in and said, "One call and he's gone." At the time, she thought he was bluffing, but now it felt like he had been warning her, or maybe bragging. The truth hit her hard. Her own brother had done this. The man who held her hand when she fell off her bike as a child. The one who gave a toast at her wedding. He had tried to destroy her home from the inside, not with fists or fire, but with a phone call. And the worst part? He was still walking around, acting normal, laughing, eating with them, playing with Turok's emotions, smiling like he hadn't just pulled a knife into their lives and twisted it quietly. Lunaya didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, something inside her went quiet, like a storm pulling itself together. She knew now what she had to do. This wasn't just about clearing Turok's name anymore. It was about showing Kasim that family may know your weaknesses, but they should never mistake your silence for fear. That evening, the house smelled of spices and grilled meat. Lunaya had cooked a full dinner, not because she felt like it, but because she wanted normal to cover the storm building inside her. Turok helped set the table, trying to stay calm, but she could feel his silence, the weight of what had happened still fresh between them. Then the doorbell rang. Qasim. He walked in with a wide smile like everything was fine. His wife Halima followed with their 2 kids, all cheerful, holding a small dessert tray. "Smells amazing, sis," Qasim said, kissing Lunaya's cheek. She smiled back, a short, tight smile. As they sat down at the table, Turok kept his eyes down, focusing on the food. Qasim was loud, talking about his day, laughing at his own jokes, acting like the air wasn't full of broken trust. At one point, he looked up at Lunaya and said, "Pass the salt?" Like that was all he needed. Just a little flavor, as if everything else in the world was still in place. Lunaya passed it without a word, but inside her, something clicked. The same hand that had called immigration on her husband, now reaching for salt at her table. The same mouth that had tried to ruin her marriage, now telling stories over fried rice. She looked across the table at Halima, calm and polite, fixing food on her children's plates. Did she know? Or was she just another piece in Qasim's game? Lunaya didn't speak. She didn't cry. She watched. Every laugh, every word, every fake gesture of love. Qasim was performing, and he thought she hadn't seen behind the curtain, but she had. And what she saw wasn't strength. It was weakness hiding under arrogance. She looked at her husband, who smiled weakly at the kids. She looked at the man who still called himself her brother, and she made a decision right there at that dinner table. She wouldn't fight him with yelling or insults. Real revenge doesn't shout. It waits. Because when someone uses your trust as a weapon, the best answer isn't war. It's silence filled with planning. It's knowing exactly who they are and letting them keep talking Keep laughing, while you quietly prepare the moment they'll never see coming. So, Lunaya smiled, passed the salt, and said, "Eat as much as you like." But deep inside, she wasn't serving dinner. She was serving warning. Halima was always the calm one. At family gatherings, she was the one who smiled politely, dressed neatly, and said all the right things. She worked at a top bank and carried herself like someone important. People admired her, how organized she was, how confident she sounded. But Lunaya had always noticed something else, a kind of nervous energy around Halima whenever someone mentioned her job. If someone asked about her promotion or her early days at the bank, she'd quickly change the topic or give short answers. At the time, Lunia thought maybe she was just shy. But then, months ago, Halima had come over one afternoon, needing to print some documents. Their home printer wasn't working well, but Turok managed to fix it. While Halima printed her papers, Lunia helped fold laundry. That's when one page came out with a smudge, and Halima quickly grabbed it, trying to hide it. But Lunia had already seen enough. It was a reference letter, supposedly from an old manager, with awkward wording and no official stamp. Something about it didn't look right. Halima had laughed it off, saying it was just a backup copy. But now, after what Kasim did to Turok, Lunaya started remembering that moment differently. That letter hadn't looked like a backup. It looked fake. And suddenly, all of Halima's nervous smiles made sense. Halima's job was built on a secret, a small lie on her resume, a reference letter that didn't come from a real boss. And Lunaya had seen it. She hadn't thought much of it back then. She hadn't planned to use it. But now, things were different. Her husband had been reported. Their love had been questioned, their life shaken. And the person who started it all was sitting peacefully in his own perfect little family. It wasn't just Kasim who needed to learn a lesson. It was the whole house of cards they'd built. Lunaya didn't rush. She didn't confront Halima or hint at anything. She just waited, quietly, observing. Halima had no idea she'd already handed over her weakness months ago, that a single sheet of paper, forgotten and smudged, had stayed in Lunaya's memory like a seed. And now, that seed was ready to grow. Because the same way someone had once used paperwork to try to destroy her husband, Lunaya had the power to use paperwork to bring truth to light. Not to ruin anyone, but to balance the scale. And Halima, polished and proud, was about to feel what it was like when someone presses where it hurts most, gently but with purpose. Lunaya waited for the right moment. She didn't want to cause a scene in front of the family. She wanted a quiet place, where words would carry more weight than shouting ever could. So one evening, she asked Kasim to meet her outside. They sat in her backyard, the sun slowly setting, the air still and heavy. Kasim leaned back in the chair like he had nothing to worry about. He even smiled. "You wanted to talk?" he asked casually, like he hadn't tried to tear her life apart. Lunaya looked him in the eye and spoke calmly. "I know it was you. You made the call." Kasim didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head and smirked. "You should be thanking me," he said. "I protected you. That man is just using you to stay here. You think he really loves you." Her chest tightened, not because of the words, but because of the way he said them, like he truly believed he had done something noble, like destroying her husband's peace was an act of care. She felt her stomach twist, but she kept her face steady. "You don't protect someone by destroying their home," she said quietly. Kasim laughed under his breath. "You're blind, Lunaya. You always were. He's not one of us. He doesn't belong. And one day, you'll see I was right." That night, Lunaya didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't beg for his understanding. She went back into the house, walked straight to her drawer, and pulled out an old folder she had kept for months, the same one from the day Halima used their printer. Inside it, folded neatly, was a copy of that strange reference letter. Halima had printed the real one again afterward, but Lunaya had kept the smudged version, just in case. And now, that just in case had become her answer. She made a clean copy of the paper, scanned it quietly, and saved it on a private drive. Not to ruin Halima, not yet, but to remind herself that power doesn't always come from loud actions. Sometimes it comes from quiet truths, patiently stored and calmly used. Because Kasim had mistaken her love for weakness. He thought being her brother gave him permission to control her life. But what he didn't realize was that loyalty built on control isn't love. It's a trap. And Lunaya was done being trapped. Halima was in her office one morning. sipping her tea, when she noticed a new email pop up. It was short and polite, sent by her manager. It simply said, "Hi Halima, can we have a quick chat this afternoon? Just something small about your file." At first she didn't think much of it. These things happen sometimes, maybe an update or a routine check. She replied yes, and went on with her day. But when she stepped into her manager's office later, the air felt different. The smile on her boss's face was tight. There were two other people in the room, one from HR and another from compliance. Halima's hands started to sweat. They asked her to sit down. Then came the questions, calm but firm. "Do you recall the reference letter you submitted during your hiring process?" Halima's heart skipped. "Yes," she said carefully. "We've received a report suggesting that the letter might not be authentic," the HR woman said. "Along with a copy of the original document you submitted, it appears to have been altered." Halima couldn't breathe for a moment. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "That's not true," she whispered, even though a part of her knew the truth was standing right in front of her. The meeting ended with them telling her she was being placed on immediate suspension. She would be contacted after the internal review. They said it was policy, nothing personal, but Halima knew. This wasn't random. Someone had reported her. Someone who had the exact paper. Someone who had been close enough to have access to it. She drove home in silence, hands gripping the wheel, mind spinning. As soon as she walked through the door, she dropped her purse and burst into tears. "Kasim," she cried out. "They said someone sent a report. Someone had the proof about my hiring letter." Kasim, sitting on the couch with his phone, looked up slowly. His face turned pale too. He didn't speak right away. He just stared at his wife as realization washed over him. He thought he had buried the knife deep into someone else's home, but now it had turned and cut back into his own. Halima sobbed into his chest, repeating the words again and again. "They have the paper," someone knew. But Kasim wasn't thinking about Halima's job anymore. He was thinking about his sister's quiet eyes at dinner, the way she didn't yell, the way she smiled and passed the salt. Kasim burst into Lunaya's house like a thunderstorm. The door flew open, and his voice followed right after. "What did you do?" He didn't wait for her to answer. He kept shouting, pacing the living room, throwing his arms in the air. "You told them about Halima's letter, didn't you? You sent it. You planned this." Lunaya was sitting on the couch, quietly holding a warm cup of tea. She didn't move. She didn't even flinch. She watched him as he lost control, yelling, blaming, twisting everything, just like he always did. But this time, she was different. When he finally stopped to breathe, she looked up at him with steady eyes. "You wanted to break my marriage," she said softly. "So I broke your mask." Kasim froze. "What did you say?" Lunaya stood slowly and walked over to him. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She didn't even look angry. She just looked clear. "You used your blood to destroy my home," she said. "But I used your pride to reveal your lie. That's the difference." He blinked at her, stunned. You don't even deny it." "I don't have to," she replied. "You made the first move. I just finished the game." He stared at her, and for the first time, he couldn't find words, because the truth was standing right there in front of him, calm, unbothered, and stronger than he remembered. Lunaya walked past him and gently opened the front door. She didn't push him out. She didn't scream at him to leave. She just said one final thing. "I never wanted to hurt Halima, but you made a choice. You tried to ruin something real just because you couldn't control it. I let you eat at my table. I let you hold my trust, and you used it to stab my husband in the back." Kasim looked at her with wide eyes, not angry anymore, just shocked. "You didn't yell," he said quietly. "No," she nodded. "I didn't need to, because she hadn't lied. She hadn't tricked him. She had simply remembered what he did, remembered what he said, and remembered that silence is never weakness when it's holding the truth." He stepped back, slowly walking out the door, not saying another word. He finally saw what he had never believed before. Lunaya wasn't the one who lost. She was the one who watched him walk away, wearing a face she had gently pulled off. Weeks passed. Turok continued to go in and out of the immigration office, answering questions, showing documents, proving again and again that his marriage to Lunaya was real. He never raised his voice. He never lost his temper. But Lunaya could see how tired he was, how the weight of being wrongly accused had taken its toll. She stood by him every step of the way, calm on the outside, but quietly praying inside that the truth would win. One morning, just as the sun was rising, A thick envelope arrived at their door. It was from immigration. Turok opened it with shaking hands while Lunaya stood beside him, holding her breath. As his eyes scanned the letter, his shoulders slowly dropped. Not in defeat, but in relief. A small smile appeared on his face, then a bigger one. He handed her the letter without saying a word. She read the words carefully, and her eyes began to fill with tears. The report had been investigated fully and proven false. Malicious intent was confirmed. His marriage was declared real and valid. His record was cleared. He was free. No more interviews, no more waiting. But that wasn't all. Later that week, Turok's company called him in for a meeting. They had been made aware of the false claim by immigration, but instead of seeing him as a problem, they admired how he handled the situation, with honesty, patience, and dignity. Their legal team had quietly supported him during the review, and now they had something more to give, a promotion. They offered Turok a regional leadership position, something he had once dreamed of but never thought would come so soon. His boss looked him in the eye and said, "People like you remind us what integrity means." When he came home and shared the news with Lunaya, she didn't speak at first. She just stood still for a moment, looking at him with wide eyes. Then the tears came. Not from sadness, not from anger, but from deep, deep relief. She cried because justice had spoken, because her husband's name had been cleared, because the storm had passed, and they were still standing, stronger than ever. Turok held her tightly, wiping her tears with his hand. He didn't need to say thank you. She already knew. He had been attacked for loving her, but in the end, that same love had brought him victory. And as they stood there in each other's arms, they both understood something simple but powerful. Truth might take time, but it never stays buried. Kasim used to walk around with pride, acting like he was the protector of everyone, the older brother, the wise man, the one who knew best. He would laugh loudly at family dinners, offer advice no one asked for, and constantly remind Halima and Lunaya of how much they owed him. He always called Lunaya sister and acted like he was helping her by looking out for Turok. But behind that smile, there was something else, something sharp, something dangerous. When everything fell apart, when Halima was suspended, when Turok was questioned by immigration, when whispers started moving from one ear to another, Kasim vanished. He didn't show up, not even once. No calls, no messages, no check-ins, just silence. The same kind of silence he had accused Lunaya of when she refused to play along with his lies. Halima, once so full of pride and noise, began to change. Slowly, quietly. She moved back into a smaller apartment. She stopped dressing up to show off. She stopped talking about herself like she was untouchable. And though she never said it out loud, everyone knew she had started to see things more clearly now. She had been used as a pawn, as a weapon, and when the game was over, she was the one left picking up the broken pieces. As for Lunaya, she didn't celebrate loudly. She didn't throw it in anyone's face. She simply moved forward, one peaceful step at a time. She walked beside Turok, her husband, with her head held high and her heart finally free of guilt. She didn't need to explain herself to anyone anymore. The truth had done that for her. She didn't win by shouting. She didn't win by fighting dirty. She won with a report. A simple, quiet report that proved her love was real and the lies were not. That's how you disarm a weapon when it looks like family. Not by bleeding for them, not by begging them to stop, but by standing still while the truth rises on its own. So when Kasim tells people he's still the older brother, it doesn't matter. Because real family doesn't try to destroy your home and then call it love. Real family doesn't run when the fire gets too hot. And real family doesn't need to shout to be heard. Lunaya showed them all what family really means. Not through anger, but through truth, through calm, through grace. And now, with nothing left to hide, nothing left to prove, she finally smiles again, not for revenge, but for peace. If this story moved you, even just a little, share it with someone who's ever been betrayed by the ones they called family.